Hello, everyone. I'm Mimi Kim, head of the Division of Biostatistics at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine and a NISS board member, and I'm going to be the moderator for this meetup. Today, we're fortunate to have on our panel 4 accomplished statisticians from the private sector, academia, and government who will talk about their professional experiences and provide advice and guidance to those of you who are or will be looking for a job in the statistics field. So here's the schedule of our meetup. Each panelist will speak for about 10 minutes, and then after each presentation, we will have 5 minutes for discussion and to answer your questions. A few words about the logistics. So all attendees are view-only participants. But if you have a question for a specific speaker, you can submit the question during that speaker's presentation using the Q&A feature on your Zoom window. To do this, you just click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of the window, type in your question, and then click enter. And we'll try to field as many questions as time allows. Your Zoom hosts today are Glenn Johnson and James Rosenberger, the director of NISS. And I just want to point out that this meetup is being recorded and will be available within 24 hours on the NISS website. So with that brief introduction, I'd like to turn it over to our first speaker, Tim Hesterberg from Google.
Thank you, Mimi. So I will share my slides. So tips for working in tech, or many of the lessons apply elsewhere as well. Themes of this talk are in statistics. There's a wide variety of options. I've had an interesting career, variety of jobs. The other theme is bounce back from failure. And then I'll give some advice. So about me, I'm a statistician at Google, previously undergraduate math major in US and Germany, PhD statistics at Stanford, worked at Pacific Gas and Electric Company, then I was a college prof, then I worked at Insightful, a statistical software company in the research department, and now at Google. I'm also active in the Sierra Club and active in a variety of nonprofits, organization where we take high school students to set up computer labs abroad, and I do water bottle rockets with kids. So my first tip for getting your first job is have a girlfriend who finds an interesting lead for you. I was in the PhD program at Stanford, had been there 4 years and feeling kind of stuck. And my wife found an ad for a job at PG&E and applied for it and got it and did that for 3 years before finishing the PhD. This was an internal consulting group, 20 people from 10 different companies, countries, variety of areas. My big project was fuel oil inventory. PG&E has a very diverse system, probably more diverse than any other place in the country. And fuel oil is the fuel of last resort. It's dirtier and more expensive than everything else. Question is how much to carry in inventory. Generally, we won't use any because the other source is available, but if things go badly, we do. So I did a large simulation generating artificial years of weather, et cetera, to see how much fuel we would need. Now, the interesting cases where we actually burn fuel and burn enough that we might run out are rare, so we would oversample these. Colder weather, drier weather, so less hydropower, nuclear outages, et cetera. And because we're doing bias sampling, we have to counteract that bias, so we would reweight. So if a particular artificial year in our data set was twice as likely to occur with the bias sampling as it would be in real life, it gets a weight of a half. And then compute a weighted average. So this is called importance sampling. And it turns out that the weighted average that I use, this one at the bottom, sum of the weights times y divided by the sum of the weights, this is just common sense. Oh, but that's not what was in the literature. So this was a case where this then turned into my dissertation. I explored different options, these two and others, and became my dissertation. So lesson 1 is don't disregard your common sense if that disagrees with what's in the literature. And then I still wanted to go into academia, so got an academic job. I was working at small colleges with lots of student involvement, summer research by myself and with students, a lot of different consulting, 20 different faculty, 12 different departments. One particular project was estimating how the ground deforms in earthquakes based on stream networks, where streams are steeper or less steep than they ought to be. Resulted in a science paper. So I enjoyed that variety of consulting, enjoyed the variety of work. I did not get tenure. Boy, was I bummed. But in retrospect, I'm glad, because I've enjoyed everything else that I've done more than that. Turns out that teaching undergraduates is not the greatest match for me. So if in your life something doesn't work out, move on. There are a lot of possibilities in statistics. You don't have to keep in the first thing. Then moved on to a statistical software company in the research department, did a lot of work with academic consultants, turning their work into commercial quality software, and did consulting and training, etc. Again, wide variety of work. And then moved on to Google, and variety of projects here, estimating how effective display ads are, optimizing websites. The second one was actually what got me to Google, because in the previous job, I had done work on sequential designs for clinical trials. I attended a tech talk at Google, thought that work could apply at Google. And let me come back to that point a little later. So talking a bit about Google, how does Google make money? We show ads. You search for flights to Hawaii, and we show lots of ads. Or maybe not. This is the kind of search I usually do, latent variables. Look at all those ads. I rarely see ads, but a few years ago when I was searching for a new car, I saw a lot more ads than I was ever used to seeing, and I actually wanted to see them. This is what we want to do. Show ads when you want to see them and not when you don't. If we show ads when you don't want to see them, yeah, we'd make a little more money in the short term, but in the long run, you learn to ignore ads altogether. We call it ads blindness. So anyway, this page is very important to Google. And so we want to do everything about this page as good as possible. And so what we do is we run experiments. When you come and do a search in Google, you're probably in the active arm of 100 experiments and the control arm of 50 times that many. We're experimenting with ways to improve the search results, ways to improve the relevance of the ads, how many ads to show, the font size, the color, back-end stuff to serve results faster. So, and you might think that because we're Googling, we've got lots of data, that statistics, random variability still doesn't matter. Not true, because we're often looking for small improvements. An improvement of 1/10 of 1% is hard to detect. But when you think of the number of customers we serve, that's a big deal. And if we can make lots of these small improvements, it adds up over time. So why am I mentioning this one in particular out of all the things that we do at Google? It's because we would love to see more people who know about how to run experiments, experimental design. Little historical background. A lot of the experimental work in statistics is done back by Ronald Fisher and colleagues at Rothamsted Agricultural Research Station. That was very batch oriented. You had to plan everything in advance and then let things grow, harvest, analyze the yields, and analyze your results. Clinical trials used to be run that way, but has moved toward doing interim analyses. And then on the web, we're one step further where we can do things continuously, modifying as we go along. And so the clinical trials work and the continuous work is one thing that I brought to Google, and one thing that we'd love to see more people have some background in. Let me throw in a plug for bootstrapping and permutation tests, resampling in general. And these are very important in statistical practice. I sometimes get people applying that don't know about these methods, and that indicates a real lack in their education. These methods are often more accurate in practice, The old rule of n greater than or equal to 30 is not even close. It's easier to get answers using these methods. In my main project, we use these methods because it's just too complicated to get formula answers. Using these lets us do better statistics. We can use robust estimates for which there aren't real easy formulas, as opposed to less robust alternatives like means. And in some cases at Google, we use them because the formulas are too slow and these methods are faster. So statisticians at Google, in a wide variety of areas. Google understands the value of statistics of making decisions based on data and in a wide variety of locations. Now, about hiring. Our 4 primary criteria are statistical knowledge, data intuition. Can you work with a set of data, figure out what's there, computation, and communication. And don't overlook that last one. We do everything in teams. So it's very important that you be able to understand other people as they're explaining things and then communicate your own ideas to them. So we don't hire for any specific area. We look for good all-around statisticians, but I would say there is a bonus for experimental design and for working with big data. When you're applying, review core statistical ideas and methods. Often the interviews may ask you to explain statistical ideas to judge how well you communicate. And if you don't remember the core ideas, you'll do poorly. In the interview, think out loud. What are advantages and disadvantages of different methods? What considerations might lead you in one direction or another? Ask questions. View this as kind of a consulting engagement where you're trying to figure out what the problem is, what makes sense to do before actually deciding what to do. Admit when you don't know things. One thing I did was to prepare a consulting resume and gave it to people, which showed a variety of the work that I had done. And a lot of our work is consulting, solving real problems. And the link at the bottom gives Paige Reagan more tips. These skills largely parallel the things that I just mentioned. Get some practice doing presentations. And don't be shy about asking your colleagues or classmates to critique these. In terms of money and job, choose interesting work. You'll be much happier in the long run. Live frugally. Don't spend a lot on the 2 big things, in particular house and car. And try and live where you can walk or bike to get to work, because you're going to be busy. And if exercise is competing for time against everything else, you'll often let it go. Whereas if exercise is the way that you get to work, that will help you in the long run. And living frugally where you aren't living hand to mouth gives you much more flexibility if you do need to switch jobs and reduces your stress. And get involved in professional groups. This raises your profile, people get to know you. A good way to start is to organize sessions for the joint statistical meetings, for other conferences, and give talks at those meetings. And community groups are desperate for volunteers in modern America. And doing some good there is really satisfying and will make you happier in the long run. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for those sage words of advice. Let me see if we have any questions. So no questions submitted so far, but I have a few for you. So do the majority of statisticians hired by Google, do they have advanced degrees in statistics? And why would you recommend someone work at Google as opposed to another tech company or a startup?
So at Google, yes, most of the people do have advanced degrees. We hire largely people with PhDs because we can, but we do hire some others, and depending on the position, PhD may or may not be required. And Google's a great place to work, but don't feel bad if you apply and don't get in. You can apply again in a year after you get more experience. There are a lot of good places to work. I've enjoyed every job that I've had, and there's a lot of good jobs out there in statistics. Google's great, but it's not the only place around.
And one last question. In academia, productivity is usually measured by numbers of papers that you publish and grants that you've gotten. How are you evaluated in industry?
Well, at Google, it's we write a self-evaluation, and we also get reviews from our manager and also peer reviews. And this is an important part of Google. At Google, we encourage people to take initiative and to work together. And one aspect of this is that if I do some consulting for somebody, or if I create a tool that other people find useful, I can ask them for peer reviews. So my review is not done just by my manager, but also by my peers. So these extra contributions that I do get counted.
And do you have some flexibility in the type of work that you do?
At Google, we have a 20% time policy where you can spend 20% of your time on some outside project of your choice. So that gives flexibility. Statisticians tend not to do that as much as software engineers because there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of variety in our job anyway. So we don't need that to keep from going crazy. So there's that flexibility. And then I've never actually had a formal 20% time project, but I've always spent more than that on various other things, and my managers have been fine with it.
Okay, now we have a couple questions. Unfortunately, we are sort of running out of time, but I can ask you, let's see, one from Rich Cuddy: how are clinical trials used for Google, and what attributes are you looking for in someone who specializes or knows the field well? So if you can answer that in like 30 seconds.
The particular aspect of clinical trials that we're using is that we don't wait until all the data is collected to analyze it, but that we analyze data as we go along. And in doing that, you need to adjust critical values and so on, so you don't get an inflated type 1 error rate.
Okay, and oh, just two people asked this question. What sort of work-life balance do you have?
A variety of things. I do a lot of outside work for academic, for industry groups like NISS, and so it's there's a balance.
You have time to do things outside of Google.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so now for our next speaker, David Hunter from Penn State.
Okay, let me make sure that I'm able to share my screen with y'all. Hang on just one moment. Did that work?
Yay.
Okay. Yeah, so as Mimi mentioned, my name's Dave Hunter, and I'm now in my 20th year at Penn State University. I'm a professor here. I used to be the department head until this past summer, and it's sort of been here my whole career. Let me just walk you through the first slide here is a little bit about my background, and the reason that I went to so much detail is to sort of basically to follow up on something Tim was saying implicitly, which is that you want to sort of be flexible and to be open about career paths that you might not have considered. You're lucky to be in the field of statistics, which is so highly valued in many domains that you shouldn't, I think, get so focused on being an academic, because that's what you've always wanted to be, that you sort of exclude all other possibilities. So as I walk through my own background, I had no idea that statistics even existed when I was an undergraduate. My degree is in mathematics from Princeton, and while I was there, I also picked up a teaching certificate because I was just interested in explaining mathematics to other people. And for 2 years after I graduated from college, I actually did teach high school math. And part of the reason that I mention this is just because I think it's awesome to have found the Alvern High School logo there that I included on my slides. That may be the one that you don't recognize of the four of them. The high school experience is where I first discovered probability and statistics. I was sort of asked unexpectedly to teach a course because the teacher who had founded the course at my particular high school had to drop out of it, and they asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said sure. So I had to learn some probability and statistics, and lo and behold, that to me was the thing that I had been looking for, namely a field in which to go back to graduate school eventually that was mathematical but a little bit more applied than pure mathematics. And so this is one of those instances where My career took a slightly different turn than I had expected, but it was simply because I was open to this change. I knew that there was something that I was maybe looking for, and this is what came along. I applied to about 8 PhD programs. Not all of them were statistics. Again, I think it was at least important to me at that point in my life to keep an open mind. I ended up choosing the University of Michigan, mostly because they offered me the largest stipend. I nearly went to an operations research program. I'm sure that my career would have developed much differently had I done so. That's totally fine. And in fact, when I finally was applying for jobs in 1999, I was very much on the fence about whether to go into academia versus going into industry. And I spoke to my advisor at the time about this, and we both agreed that it was easier for me to start in academia and switch to industry than the other way around if I ended up wanting to try both. And so I decided it made more sense to apply to academic jobs. And here I am 20 years later. And I don't see myself leaving right now because I like living in State College and I like my colleagues at Penn State very much. So this is just sort of what happened, and it all came about because I was sort of prepared for it. I had a background that was flexible, and I was just sort of willing to sort of follow my heart, as Tim put it. I really liked some of the things that Tim said, and I would sort of underscore his emphasis on being flexible and not giving up, and just, find things that you want to do. I love, by the way, that he threw in some slides on work-life balance. I totally agree with him on that. I'm sitting in an office here at Penn State University. I live 1 mile from where I'm sitting, and to me it's very important to be able to walk or bike to work every day. So I just wanted to put in that additional plug for what Tim already said. One thing that is a little bit different from 20 years ago today is the fact that postdocs were very uncommon in 1999. And so it was more standard for people who were going into academia to go directly from graduate school. If today you think you want to be an academic and you're worried about whether you should take a postdoc, I would say that you're kind of in this middle ground where it's not necessary, but there's no harm in applying for both and weighing your options as they come in, especially if you're torn about this. So postdocs are an option, as you probably know already if you're thinking about this at all in 2018. So now let me shift gears just a little bit and talk about my view as a senior faculty member at an R1 university. That means a large research university, namely Penn State University. Excuse me. I've deliberately chosen the order for these bullet points because the first thing I want to emphasize is something that Tim also said, and that is that communication is important no matter where you go. And in academia, the main way that you can demonstrate your ability to communicate is to show that you've had valuable teaching experiences. So no matter what job you pursue, a teaching experience in graduate school will be a good thing. And one of my pet peeves is graduate students in statistics who feel that this is somehow beneath them or that their eventual careers are not going to necessitate being trained to teach other people about statistics. I can't think of a job in statistics today that does not involve some degree of communicating with other people. Obviously, this is true in academia, and I will go so far as to say that the balance between research and teaching has been shifting a little bit toward the teaching end of things. It is not the case that you can get a job easily in academia simply because you have a ridiculous CV if it seems as though you might be a weak teacher. That's a person that's not going to be very attractive to very many academic institutions. All right, so moving on to that CV, right? So my second bullet point says, do interesting work. Now, yes, it is the case that having papers on your CV when you apply for academic jobs is important. It will help you. No, it is not necessary to have 8, 10, 12, 15 papers on your CV. It is not a contest. What I would say is that you should view papers on your CV as evidence of the work that you're doing being interesting. CV lines are not ends in and of themselves. What we're looking for at a place like Penn State is to read between the lines. We're looking for people who are actually doing interesting science. And if you've got a couple of publications that show that you have followed an interesting, let's say, applied problem through to fruition to the point where you've been able to publish a paper on that. That's a strong indicator that you're going to continue to do interesting work when you join our faculty. So yeah, papers are important, but please don't get into the game of trying to keep score based on papers alone. Also, think about what you like to do. I would say that the trend in statistics as an academic discipline is toward the applied side of things. It's much better than it was, let's say, 20, 25 years ago, to have strong applied statistics credentials. And that can look however you want it to look. The trends in our profession are toward more collaboration. They're toward more of an emphasis on computing. They're toward communicating with the outside world, whether that means developing software or keeping a Twitter feed that's widely read. These kinds of things are going to be valued today in a way that they might not have been back when it was more about how many papers showed up on your CV at the time that you applied. And then finally, I would say that at the time that you go up to apply for these jobs, sell yourself, as I say in the last bullet point. And by that, I don't mean to sort of try to be somebody you're not, but please put some thought into what you say in a cover letter. And I know this is a hard ask because sometimes people apply to 40, 50, 60 jobs. But for the ones that you're really interested in, see if you can't tailor at least one of those paragraphs to why you think that you'll be a good fit. A cover letter is an important way that you can sort of get beyond what's in your CV. You can help us read between the lines a little bit. Also, part of what I meant by selling yourself is what happens when you actually visit a place. If you're lucky enough to get an interview, the job talk becomes quite important. And this is partly about communication. A lot of the faculty members in the department in which you will be interviewing will form their entire basis for deciding whether that you should join their faculty according to what you do in your job talk. And so communication becomes very important. Having an organized talk to give, conveying the sense that you can explain complicated ideas well, not filling every single screen as full as it can be, not giving theorem after theorem after theorem. Can you give a sense of the big picture, maybe a sense that you're technically able to prove the theorems if need be, but certainly not dwelling on that? These are the sorts of things that I think you want to try to do when you go and visit a place. And then one last slide I wanted to end with this, because this was a really interesting anecdote. This happened to me a couple of years ago. I was part of a group of department heads that were having a workshop, and it was a workshop for department heads of statistics and biostatistics departments. And we had invited in a series of speakers from academia and industry. One of these speakers was a junior faculty member who happened to be up for tenure that year. And this person had put together a presentation and had invented these two fictitious case studies, case A and case B. And I think that the speaker had wanted to make the point to us department heads that things were changing in statistics, that case A, which I'm not showing here, but which was a much more traditional type of resume, of CV, was maybe not the same thing that we should be valuing as case B, or that case B has a little bit more to offer than it might have seemed in the past. And the reason that I found this anecdote interesting was because all of us in the room immediately thought that case B was by far the more interesting of the two case studies. So remember, case A is a traditional, like I got 8 papers in the top 4 journals in the world kind of a CV, right? Whereas case B has all the things that you see in front of you. Popular R packages, works with neuroscientists, right? So this is somebody who's doing some real applied statistics, maybe a strong funding base. I thought that there was something on here about, oh, maybe this was something that came up in the discussion. There was like something about a Twitter feed that's widely read. So the point of the speaker is that statistics is changing a little bit, and that junior faculty members today want to have an impact on the world. And what I would say is that we at R1 universities agree with that. We would like the profile of the people that we hire to be the statistics of the future, not the statistics of the past. And so to the extent that you can sort of think about what that means for you personally and know that you have lots of room to insert your own personality into your job search, I hope that you find that helpful. I'm gonna stop there, Mimi.
Great, thanks so much, David, for those helpful tips for finding a position in academia. We do have 2 questions that were submitted. Samantha asks, can you recommend resources for improving teaching skills outside of taking on more teaching duties?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, don't take on more teaching duty. That's not a good way to improve your teaching skills. One thing that I strongly recommend is, especially if you're at a larger university, which you probably are if you're in a PhD program, find the resources on campus outside of the statistics department that are devoted to pedagogy. And these are people who will have thought about the science of teaching. They will be able to tell you stuff about active learning and why it's important to get your students involved. These are things that you're not going to hear from a typical statistics mentor. Well, that's changing as well, but I would say go outside your statistics department, because there are almost certainly experts in pedagogy at your university.
Excellent advice. And Nora asks, how are master's level grads doing in the job market? Do they have trouble competing for jobs without a PhD?
Well, now I'm going to address that based on what we're looking for in academia, since I think that's kind of my role. And also because I don't really know what master's level statisticians are doing outside of academia. We will hire master's level statisticians as instructors. Obviously, we don't hire them for faculty positions that require a PhD or higher, or I should say a PhD, but we're very interested in hiring people to teach our courses. Now, we don't always have the same needs for instructors like that, but we will hire them. So there is a role into, rather a route into academia for master's level statisticians. It's just not as well traveled.
Tim, what about master's level statisticians applying for industry?
Google may be a bit of a special case because we have so many applicants. We tend to hire further up the chain, but masters are increasingly common and master's programs are getting better. So you'll see more and more places hiring master's people, including Google for some of the jobs.
And I'm sorry, Tim, we had a couple other questions for you about software that's used at Google, and do you need a lot of programming skills such as R or Python?
You do need to be able to program. Google is not a place where I say what to do and tell a software engineer to go do it. I use a lot of R. There's also a lot of Python here. My own group is moving from R to Python because we do work with software engineers, and it's easier to transition from trying things out to production if we start in Python.
Thank you. David, I have just one last question for you. So when you're evaluating candidates, how important is having experience in consulting and in collaborations?
So that's 2 different questions. I would say consulting is not that important, except to the extent that it indicates that you have strong communication skills. So in other words, if you can indicate in some fashion that you communicate and present well, that's sufficient. We're not specifically looking for consulting necessarily. Now, obviously, if it's a job in our consulting center, that's different. But just for a straight faculty position, we don't value consulting per se. But in terms of the communication, that's absolutely a must.
Okay, thanks very much, David. So next we have Ezra Kurum from UC Riverside, and she's going to be talking a little bit about the pros and cons of doing a postdoctoral position after getting a PhD.
Let me unmute myself and start sharing my slides. Okay, so I'll share a little bit of my experience in terms of postdoctoral training and how, what are the advantages of that. A brief bio on my background. I got a PhD in statistics from Penn State University, and then I was a postdoctoral associate at Yale University in the Department of Epidemiology. And then before I started my job as an assistant professor of statistics at UC Riverside. And since 2016, I have been at UC Riverside, and I listed a little bit of my research interests in the slide. So this is, in this slide, I tried to list all the advantages of postdoctoral training I benefited from. Some of them are self-explanatory. For instance, you should definitely use your postdoctoral time to publish your dissertation and enrich your CV in terms of quality publications. I personally had no teaching duties, more time to pursue research. But at the same time, some postdoctoral trainings give you some teaching duties. For instance, you could be teaching one undergraduate class for just per year. And I believe that's actually a good time to take advantage of this, because it will give you a better idea of how to manage time between research and teaching. And also, if you didn't have any teaching experience during your PhD, this would help you to get more teaching duties. Additional training and mentoring, you could get a second field of expertise. For me, it was epidemiology and other statistical areas during my training, and you should definitely try to use this as an opportunity to get additional mentoring. But there is a good balance between that. You should still learn to be independent, but get regular feedback. You don't want to get too much mentoring, which I'll talk more about it in the next slide. Grant writing, if you didn't get any grant writing experience during your PhD, you should definitely ask your postdoctoral mentor to whether you could review their grants, and whether they will let you to write part of their grants and get feedback from them. Before you start writing your own grants in a research university, definitely take advantage of some feedback from your postdoctoral mentor. A grant that you could apply during your postdoctoral training is K99 R01. In the K99 portion of this grant you use during your postdoc, and that's called the mentoring phase. And the R01 portion is going to help you land your job in a research university, because this part you take with you to the university that you start as an assistant professor. That's the independent phase. And you can get more information about this online. Collaborations. So I think this was one of the most beneficial parts of my postdoctoral training, because now my postdoc mentor became my future collaborator. So I got more, I have more groups that I'm working, but also I learned how to be working in an interdisciplinary group. My group, so this gave me an experience in how to communicate statistics, which Tim, how to establish a common language in a multidisciplinary group. And is actually still helping me to find more collaborations in my current university and how to be successful in them. Mentoring, I believe most postdocs get an opportunity to mentor undergraduates and graduates, which is actually helpful in academia. And also besides getting this opportunity, you should also be observing how your postdoc mentor is managing their own group. What seems to be working effectively, what is not working effectively, and when things don't work out, how your postdoc mentor behaves and how they change their mentoring style. These are stuff that you should definitely monitor and learn about. Career decisions is actually going back to what Dave and Tim pointed out. Postdoc is a good time, I think, to rethink what you want to do with your life. Do you want to stay in academia? Do you want to just keep doing research? Do you want to be in a research institute that you don't have to teach? Do you want to be in a research university or teaching university, or do you want to go to industry or government? I think it's an excellent time to decide what you want to do with your life. Interview experience. If you apply for postdoctoral positions and you go for interviews, which was certainly my experience, I learned what to ask, what not to ask, what to pay attention to, and what to prepare for the interviews, and how to give a job talk. Actually, that was an excellent practice for me. So to take advantage of the these stuff that I mentioned in the previous slide, you should be cautious about a couple of things. First of all, a few teaching duties is good, but you should definitely ask how much teaching duties you're gonna get or administrative duties you're gonna get, because you don't wanna be buried under these. And if you want to apply for research university, you have to be productive in terms. Definitely check the publication and grant record of your mentor, because you have opportunities to research, and you want opportunities to write group, like how I publish anything, did they the mentor to write grants, or were they allowed to review the grants, read the grants, and so forth. I believe the most important part is you don't want poor or too much training. You want to be something in between PhD advisor and independent researcher. You don't want to be left alone and learn nothing, but you don't also want to be monitored all the time. What you want is to take charge of your project with regular feedback. You need a structured program. You shouldn't get stuck, but what I mean is you should see postdoc as a temporary position. You don't want, and you also need to make sure your mentor sees it that way with future collaborations. Again, this is something that you should ask to current people in the lab, in the group. You could ask how long they have been there, whether they published anything, and so forth. Funding, usually each postdoc position is initially for a year and renewed depending on mutual consent. So you could ask how long the mentor is anticipated will stay, how long do they anticipate to fund you. So you should definitely find out about how long you're going to stay there before you go into this. And if you pay attention to these items, I think you will have a very productive and useful postdoctoral experience. And these are some of the websites that I use to find postdoctoral positions and also academic positions. And also they have industry and government positions listed on these websites as well. Thank you for listening, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ezra. So you went from getting a PhD from a stat department into being a postdoc in the Department of Epi. How difficult a transition was that for you? I mean, did you have any Epi background before you started your postdoc, or did you take additional classes during your postdoc?
So yes, I had no experience in epidemiology, and basically I worked on vaccine efficiency, and I had no experience with that. I took some classes because my postdoctoral mentor actually encouraged me to learn about history of epidemiology and how to actually, what statistical tools they use and so forth, like understand more of how bacteria and viruses work. It was challenging because so Penn State has, not that Dave is online, but Penn State has a really great program. You have to take consulting classes, and I also worked at consulting center. But I always had someone else with me to help me out when I can't communicate. So doing a postdoctoral training at epidemiology actually was difficult at the beginning, because I realized that it takes a while to have your own language, statistics. And that was the challenging part, but I think I survived, and now it helped me a lot.
And are you, in your current work at UC Riverside, are you still applying some of the EPI principles that you picked up during your postdoc?
Exactly. So actually that helped me a lot. So I managed to teach a class on statistical methods for epidemiological studies. And I also have some colleagues that we're working on vaccine policy. So that definitely helped me.
Great. Thank you so much for that very nice presentation. So last but not least is Tommy Wright from the US Census Bureau. Tommy, you should unmute yourself.
Oh, maybe Tommy can't.
Tommy, we still cannot hear you. Tommy, we cannot hear you. Can others hear him? No. Can you unmute yourself? It looks like you're on mute.
I have.
There you go. Yes.
Am I okay now?
Yes, great. We can hear you.
Thank you very much.
I should start from the beginning.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here today. I regret that I cannot see your faces, but thank you for dialing in or phoning in. I want to make 3 points. The 3 previous speakers have given excellent presentations, and there isn't much I can add, but I do want to make 3 points. And I've taught for over 35 years and among many things. And one of the things that I would often say to students is, behave so that you would want to hire yourself. So there's a lot that goes into that. And somehow I've carried that personally with me. Behave professionally and otherwise as though I would want to hire myself. So there's a lot that goes into that. A second thing that I sometimes say to colleagues, particularly younger colleagues, is approach each position as though it's your last. Sometimes I will see people wanting to, and this is beyond postdoc, but sometimes I will see people wanting to look at the next job. And sometimes I will say to them that your best way to get to the next job is to do extremely well with the job that you currently have. People will see it and people will come looking for you. A third point I want to make is I consider myself to be a student of mathematics. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my own personal journey. I was born and grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. In first grade, my elementary school teacher gave me a book in mathematics. So mathematics at that time was mainly arithmetic and adding, subtracting, multiplying, and division. And I solved every problem in that book. And I thought that I knew everything that there was to know about mathematics. But as I proceeded to second, third, through high school, college, I discovered that as I learned more, I knew that I knew less. And so that's why I have the feeling that I'm a student of mathematics. I should say that also my high school teacher, my high school principal selected my college for undergraduate study. And that took me to Knoxville, Tennessee. His college was Knoxville College. And there I earned a degree in mathematics and followed that by a degree in mathematics at the University of Tennessee. My choice for going to the University of Tennessee was made by a professor there who was teaching at Knoxville College. And he said, why don't you come and study and work on your master's degree in mathematics at the University of Tennessee? I did. So a second decision, which was not my own. I did some teaching in mathematics at a small college, and my master's thesis was actually in algebra on fully ordered groups. And while I was teaching in mathematics, like David, it was time to teach the course in probability and statistics. And none of the other faculty members wanted to teach it. So I was not asked to teach a course in probability and statistics. I was made to teach the course in probability and statistics. I was very young at the time. In fact, about as young as most of the students. But what I discovered about statistics is that I could continue to be very theoretical. I enjoyed the beauty about mathematics, but I could continue in statistics to be very theoretical, but I could also be very applied. And at that time, I thought I would always be near teaching. And so the idea was that you could teach not only in a mathematics department, but you could teach in a statistics department, you could teach in a business school, you could teach in a medical college. So I saw lots of applications. So with statistics, I see a vast spectrum of possibilities for me, and I found that very appealing. I should say that while in Knoxville, I picked up family. My wife and I married and had one daughter. While at Knoxville, I was asked to escort some students for a graduate school day at The Ohio State University. So I escorted them. I was a chaperone, actually. And while I was there, I accidentally said, well, I'm going to see what's going on in the mathematics department, because with a master's, I was thinking about getting a PhD, but not quite sure about it. And so I accidentally ran into a person named Ransom Whitney, whose name is with the Mann-Whitney test, a non-parametrics test. And I talked with him, and I was saying I was thinking about continuing my graduate study, and he said, why don't you come to study at Ohio State? And at that time, he was acting chair of the mathematics department, so I actually applied, and they let me in. So once again, not much thinking about what I was going to do. I actually enjoyed my years at the Ohio State University. Following Ohio State University, I accepted a position actually for a couple of years teaching, and then I eventually joined Oak Ridge National Laboratory. It was at Oak Ridge National Laboratory that I enjoyed sampling. I think I was attracted to sampling, and this is sampling from a finite population, because of the tools of discreteness, the tools of combinatorics, and the tools of applied probability. I often sometimes say that I find mathematics very beautiful, and I'm not going to, I find statistics a bit ugly with the notation, superscripts, subscripts, and I think of statisticians as trying to actually solve real problems. And when you solve real problems or trying to understand them, things do become a bit complicated. I continued some teaching there at Knoxville College, my undergraduate college, and at the University of Tennessee. I did some private consulting there. Whenever there was a problem related to sampling, I got involved in a variety, and more family came along. In about 1996, there was a call to join the Census Bureau. And so I said, well, why not? I had been a research fellow at the Census Bureau for 3 summers, and I was familiar with the area, and I love the area. There's no better place on the planet to be than in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area and working for the U.S. Bureau of the Census. And I sometimes say to people that our work is actually defined in the Constitution. That's very appealing to me, that our democracy is based upon this idea of representation. And a lot of what I do in sampling is also based on you're drawing a subset from a larger universe and trying to make inferences about the larger universe. So I'm attracted to the idea of our work supports decision-making that affects all of our lives, and that it's actually in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. So it's very upfront, this idea of counting, which I find very, very attractive. And while here in this area, as always, I managed to do a little teaching at Georgetown University. The second slide. These are some, so I actually so my work here is that of, my position is one of technical leadership. So I head a center with over 30 researchers in statistical methods, and practically all have PhDs. So my personal interests involve this issue, this topic of optimal allocation of sample surveys. That is, if you're going to do a study of students at a university, rather than take a sample of size 100 from all the students, one might believe that it's good to have some freshman students, some sophomore students, some juniors, and some seniors. And so one can stratify the population ahead of time. But the question comes, how many students should be freshmen? How many of the 100 should be sophomores? How many should be juniors? And how many should be seniors? I like that problem. That problem was actually the topic of my dissertation as well, and it stays with me. A related problem, which I discovered while teaching actually, is that there's a relationship between optimal allocation, or Neyman allocation sometimes, as is known in the sampling literature, to the actual method that we use to apportion the seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. And so I've done some work in that, looking at that problem, mainly trying to explain it and making links with sampling. The idea of apportionment is that you have 435 seats for the U.S. House of Representatives, and following each decennial census, there's a question of how many seats should go to the state of Alabama, how many of these should go to the state of Maryland. And so this is similar to the allocation problem in sampling. And I actually discovered that by accident while teaching, and I said, you know, this problem of optimal allocation of the samples sounds like the problem of allocating seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. And that night, after teaching that lecture, I went home and in a few more days found that these two problems are special cases of a more general problem, and was able to get a result out. I like applications of Lagrange's identity, and I won't say more about that, but so a bit of my interest is trying to prove things in terms of Lagrange's identity. One of the things that I have a very simple proof out using Lagrange's identity is that one can prove that the correlation coefficient is between -1 and 1 in a simple way. There is the fourth bullet, rankings. We collect data. I should say a little bit more about the Census Bureau. We do the decennial census every 10 years, and this decennial census mainly gives us a count of how many people are in the country and where they are. To actually estimate characteristics of these people, we do sample surveys. And many of these sample surveys are stratified at a high level by states, and we come up with estimates at the state level. And so there's great interest always in how does one state compare with another. And many times we want to actually rank states in terms of, for example, children in poverty. What's the proportion of children in poverty? And so we will use estimates from the samples, but we will want to do some ranking. Either we will do them explicitly or users will do them implicitly. And so the question is, how good is this ranking? And so this problem within the last, I guess 5 or 6 years, I've had some interest in that. And the fifth bullet talks about interviewers. How do we effectively engage the public? When we collect data, particularly the unemployment rate, we go to about 70,000 addresses each month, and we ask questions about how many hours did people work last week, what kinds of work did they do, what's their educational background. And so that particular survey, because we report the unemployment rate each month, so that particular survey requires that we have a quick turnaround. And so it's very important that we interact with interviewers in a great way. In fact, interacting with interviewers and the issue of non-response is, in my mind, our biggest challenge. How do we get responses? How do we make measurements on the population of people? I should also add that not only people, but we also do measurements for the economy. In fact, we are part of the Department of Commerce, and a lot of the statistics that you see released, 13 important economic indicators, are actually collected by the Census Bureau. A final point I want to make is that I enjoy spending some time talking about and thinking about big data with official government statistics. So many things come to mind there. I'm fascinated by the ability, the explosion and availability of data now. And one of the attractions that I have for big data is that with big data, there are lots of, I'm not going to attempt to define big data, but there are lots of ways of thinking about big data. And one thing that's in my mind is that with big data, people are not being asked for responses. With the Census Bureau, we ask people for responses, or we ask companies for responses. And so hence the opportunity to not respond. With big data, people are not asked for responses. So I'm attracted at that thought. How can we make use with our surveys? We believe that we have representative samples. With big data, I'm less sure that our samples are representative, but the pressure's on to look at alternative ways of making measurements and producing official government statistics. So I get in lots of meetings there, and I think I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, so thanks so much, Tommy, for that very interesting talk about your background and your work at the Census Bureau. We do have one question submitted from Kevin. He says he's looking for an internship for the coming summer. Does the Census Bureau hire interns? And if so, what is the application process like?
The Census Bureau does hire interns, and we're actually, this was being discussed a bit yesterday. We're hoping to have a posting of this sometime in late December, early January. So there are possibilities for internships. There is one actually, I believe also for graduate students that's actually posted now. If you go to USA Jobs and look for Commerce Department or Census Bureau on the mathematical statisticians, you might find some opportunities there.
Okay, thanks so much. Well, we're at the top of the hour now, so I want to thank all of our panelists and attendees for participating. I think we were able to field most of the questions that were submitted. Please look out for the announcements of our future NISS virtual meetups and other exciting events. So have a great day, and hope to have your participation in future events.
Thank you.